only way to bring a population to heel. How, then, did the other Primarchs manage it? How has world upon world managed it, without resorting to butchering children and broadcasting their screams across the planetary Voxnet?
It was the only way. Their worlds were never as serene as mine was.
And the serenity of yours died the first second your back was turned. So tell me again how you succeeded. Tell me again how this all worked perfectly.
He is a prisoner cloaked in darkness. His hands are splashed with the vitae of life. The crimson stains him. In echo of his dead homeworld's tradition, criminals were tattooed red by their families, to show them as death-marked, a sign that no gang or family would tolerate grave failure, but that the condemned still had labors to perform before they were allowed to die. He has been a traitor and a fool, but for the first time in his existence, he has killed one who was deserving. He has killed to save a life.
I am justice. I am judgment. I am punishment.
It dawns upon him why his father had marked him. On the killing fields of Isfahan V at the Horus Heresy's dawn. For he has betrayed him. He is Sevatar, Prince of Crows no longer. He has become something more. Hatred is never so sweet, and vengeance never so pleasurable, than when it is applied to one once loved. A proverb of a world choked in smoke, a civilization devoid of a sun's warmth. From a child's eyes black as the reigning perpetual midnight, he looked to the sky. He witnessed the only true illumination, lighting a backdrop of smog-choked skies. There the nobility of Nostromo Quintus languished in this world's only true luxury, illumination. Across the hive cities, with civilizations stacked upon each other from the dim-lit towers to the utter bleak ruins below, the billions of Nostromo suffered the same curse. That this was a world of utter ruthlessness. The child's black eyes, even at his young age, could perceive this. It was his destiny to join the various gangs that had murdered for scrap on every street and slum. Perhaps by the time this child was in his adolescence, he would have taken his first life. Before he would be gutted, his life draining away in a rain-slick alley just like his father. The boy's mother hated when he spoke like this. She always said, "One day, Jaego, you will grow out of it and be better with people." Jaego didn't believe her. His sense for always being right felt more like a curse. He couldn't help it. From the time he and others had darted through the dangerous streets to the Skolum, to the gang fights where blades were drawn, he felt the answer come to him before the questions were asked. He knew the strike was coming before the knife had reached the assailant's hands. There was no friendship to the boy, who had seemed better than everyone else. Only to his surprise, many had admiration, or perhaps it was fear. He could never grasp which one it was. Others were so hard to read, which was why he preferred to be alone, tossing breadcrumbs to hungry crows as he looked out towards the city of murder. At times he felt the pressure build, as if some awakening knocked at the door he kept barred, but he suppressed it, lest the pressure turn into severe headaches, or worse, seizures. The voices were bad enough, but it compared nothing to looking into the eyes of the dead. There were always corpses on Nostromo. A part of him knew what this was, and the thought of being torn apart by an angry mob wasn't so inviting. Screams. Endless screams echoed through the layers of choking civilization on Nostromo Quintus. Screams in of itself was nothing new to Jaego. It was the background accompaniments to his life in squalor. Yet these haunting howls gave him pause. A soul in anguish far beyond the daily senseless violence of constant dark Nostromo. From picked screens from the lowest warrens to the glittering towers of nobility, Jaego bore witness to the monster. The rumor made flesh. The story that haunted nightmares made reality. The Night Haunter. It was a man. No, it was far larger than a man. It was a towering giant, pale-skinned like all Nostromo, with eyes like voids. Its teeth were razors. Its bones jutted out despite its muscular form. It was wrapped in cloaks and makeshift armor panels that shifted its silhouette to resemble the foul beast that roamed Nostromo's black deserts. Worst of all was its voice. It sounded human. Jaego felt his mind shift from permanent detached survival to pure fear, as for the first time he felt like a helpless prey, caught in a predator's gaze.
I am going to save you. I am going to save you all. The people of this world will rise above the station of beasts. I will make them. If I have to bathe in the blood of you all to make that happen, then so be it.
Sinners, the Night Haunter called them. Disobedient who had to learn true justice. The tortured screams behind the Night Haunter continued, the victim wailing in an agony so deep that they begged for death. Their crime, Jaego could not recall. For in the years to come, all he would remember is the same screams, the same pain, all from the crime of murder, thievery, to underpaying staff, to simple public disturbance. The streets of Nostromo Quintus began to grow quiet. From gang leaders to shopkeepers, many began to disappear. Over years a disturbing quiet descended upon Nostromo. Jaego alongside others feared to speak, lest you draw the Night Haunter. From the tallest spire in Nostromo Quintus, the monster finally declared himself king, as Nostromo suffered no crime again. To look upon him, it burned some to permanent blindness. From the skies a golden eagle ship had descended. The city wept, as a delegation of light took step towards the Night Haunter's palace. Every man, woman and child gathered in the streets, their pale faces staring upon the strangers in their midst, as the sky was brightened by the false stars of void ship engines. Jaego could not push through the crowd to see, but the wails of exultation could be heard for miles. Warriors the size of giants marched through the grim slick streets, as at their core 4 titans strode. And if the rumors were true, they marched towards the Dark King. Last came the figure that would change this world forever. Jaego could not believe the words others spoke of him. This Emperor of mankind, a giant in resplendent golden plate, whose very presence was humanity distilled, the source of the weeping millions who had been blessed with a glimpse. This emperor had come at the head of a spanning empire, the Imperium of mankind. From Terra they had set out to reunify mankind across the stars, to bring all enlightenment and unity. And he had come to Nostromo for his son, his Primarch, a general to lead vast armies in his name. He had come for Konrad Curze, the Night Haunter. They shall be my finest warriors, the Emperor had said. These men who give of themselves to me. Like clay I shall mold them, and in the furnace of war I shall forge them. They shall be of iron will and steely sinew. In great armor I shall clad them, and with the mightiest weapons shall they be armed. They will be untouched by plague or disease, No sickness shall blight them. They shall have such tactics, strategies and machines that no foe will best them in battle. They are my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my space marines, and they shall know no fear. Jaego felt the most excruciating pain in his life. New organs, grown from the genetic material of the being he now knew to be Konrad Curze, were surgically placed within his adolescent form. Chemicals and stimuli filled his veins, as ruthless training began under men called Space Marines, superhuman warriors of the 8th Legiones Astartes. The strongest and brightest of Nostromo's sons were offered up. Many Jaego recognized from his own gang and rivals. They were offered a chance to join mankind in the unification of the galaxy. It is the 30th millennium, and after nearly a decade of combat training, Jaego stood in a chamber. He stood bare beside thousands of transformed beings like him, the embarrassment of mortal humans forgotten, lost in their elevation. In midnight blue he was clad, with a leering skull helm and covered in flayed flesh and dark trophies. Like the Night Haunter before him, his silhouette will inspire fear. Dread his greatest weapon to bring worlds into compliance. A chain-glaive spear placed into his hands as he sails to the stars.
Justice is my purpose. The only route to total justice is fear. Without fear, there can be no order. You will suffer now to feed that fear, so that many others will live.
I am the son of a sunless world, an 8th Legion to my core. Jaego Sevatarian proclaims. As to the stars, the sons of Nostromo battle, continuing the compliance set out by the Emperor of Mankind and his vast armies. He finds that he has no true comrades, no true brothers. He finds great difficulty in recalling that other people have different perspectives to him. Of course, he knew that they led different lives, and shaped by different experiences, but he struggled to imagine their frames of reference. He couldn't, in essence, see things from their point of view. From Mark III plate, from the hulking forms of the elite First Company Terminators, the sons of Nostromo began to ascend the ranks, replacing the Terran veterans lost in the ever-demanding wars of the Imperium. After decades, Jaego stood beside the nightmare of his childhood, his Primarch Konrad Curze. Ave Dominus Nox, hail the Lord of Night, who showed Jaego the truth of humanity, where non-compliant worlds would rally in defense, only to be met by silence. Weeks of silence, until the screams began, the projection of torture that Jaego and his legion would inflict upon the civilians stolen in the night. Capitulation always came, and sometimes without a bolter being fired. Gifted, ruthless, dishonorable and arrogant, they called him. A reputation in combat unmatched, a respect earned by no others, and most surprisingly of all, the favor of the Primarch. He was now Sevatar, First Captain, Master of the Atramentar, First Company, the Prince of Crows. The eerie silence born on Nostromo spread across the Legion's conquests. They were hated, despised by other Primarchs and Legions. Jaego could feel it in their judgmental stares. "Please spare us your moral relativism, Uncle," he had told Magnus the Red, when the Legions had almost come to blows over a library. After decades of war, countless deserving and undeserving slain, at the right hand of his Primarch, Jaego saw firsthand the instability. It was no secret that the Lord of the Eighth suffered visions of the future, a deadly weapon that fueled his perfect justice upon Nostromo. Yet his sanity in moments made Sevatar question. He found a certain irony in the apparent questioning of sanity, for a demigod that skinned others alive and projected their screams to relatives. But it could not be denied. After decades, the Primarch had begun to speak to himself. The maddening truth of whether here was now, or lost in a vision. The truth dawned on Sevatar, that Curze's grasp on reality was slipping. Sevatar led his command claw through a city of choking clouds, fresh smoke rolling through every street, vision almost completely obscured, lumps of rockcrete often snaring on the squad's feet. The city they moved through was a dense ruin, still thundering with orbital bombardments. At Sevatar's side was Cayman Manek, Ashmenkai Vor, Gish Tavor and Yankan Fen. Their mission was utter idiocy, and would surely result in their doom. But none dared speak it to Sevatar. Their search for the Nighthaunt had brought them into the proverbial eye of the storm. The squad began to bicker, and Sevatar grew tired of standing around, pushing forward into nearby buildings. There were still pockets of resistance in this city. When a gunshot panged off their armor, the entire squad replied with their bolters. Vor found the attempt brave, but Manek only saw stupidity. They halted at the foothold of a towering structure, one so large that even after direct hit from a lance strike, it still stood straight. Inside the building, it was a ruined mess, from its withering heights down to the basement. Ash and ruined furniture littered the floor, old water pipes draining into nothing. Look at this place. Why are we doing this? This planet is already ours. Why has the Nighthaunter come down here? Said Fen. He whistled, pointing towards the destruction. Sevatar knew why, but he didn't say. Who knows what the Primarch's will is? Perhaps he wishes to make himself a new domicile. Now it has been remodeled. This looks like the sort of place Lord Curze might favor, said Vor. Tavor made himself busy with his auspex, which was mostly useless in the orbital bombardment, alongside the rest of the equipment for navigating. It was not chance that brought Sevatar into the ruined building. An itch at the edge of his consciousness dragged his attention upwards through the mess of the lance hit. Sevatar preferred not to let his curse guide him, but he would rather use it than die. And right now it guided him further up. The command claw began climbing the stairs, until they looked upon 5 legionary corpses, all of them 96th Company, 12th Claw. Their armor was ruined, their skin peeled back, and their gene seed removed. A dark truth dawned upon them. These wounds were inflicted by power blades, set in pairs, wide-spaced, artificial lightning claws, said Manek grimly. Mercy, replied Fen. And forgiveness, said Tovor. This was the work of their own father. Sevatar was silent, and continued looking for his Primarch. They poured into the wrecked auditorium. The air stank of the distinct iron of legionary blood. Curze sat at the epicenter of slaughtered transhuman warriors, his chin streaked with blood, and shreds of engineered organ flesh still stuck to his teeth. Sevatar, why are you here? It is dangerous. The bombardment. He waved the flopping limb up at the ceiling. We have come for you, said Sevatar. You are at risk. Curze did not see any risks. Only a risk for Sevatar and his squad. Sevatar doubted his Primarch could survive a lance hit. Curze began to speak of the justice that had taken place. The 96th Company were all fresh recruits, and he had killed them for the crime of overreaching their ambition for slaughter, where it was not needed. Curze turned to Sevatar and his men. and began to question them on his teachings. Terror is a clean blade, and a friend of compliance, they replied. A haunting pride cracked on Curze's face, prideful to see that his teachings did not go to waste. Those he killed were cruel. They slew to entertain themselves, and Curze found them unworthy of his gifts, and had decided to take them back. Then the bombardment. It is to hide their crimes from the other legions, asked Manic. You, at least, Cayman Manic, are blessed with a little brain, Curze said. A city burns when it should not, all for the errors of these criminals. We should return to the fleet, my lord. I promise to convene the Crypteria at first opportunity, said Sevatar. We shall conduct a purge of the inappropriate recruits. A grunt greeted Sevatar's promise. It will not help. It is too late for that now. The serpent has bitten. The poison is inside the body and begins its work. I have seen it. From a shadow even Nostraman eyes could not pierce, Corvus Corax, Primarch of the Raven Guard, emerged, confronting the Night Lords for orbitally bombarding a compliant city. Sevatar and his claw raised their bolters, not daring to fire. Something that size should never have been able to hide from him, Sevatar thought, unnerved by the Raven Lord's prowess. The similarities between the two brother Primarchs was undeniable. Only Curze's eyes contained a drop of white at the edges. Curze began to explain the internal dispute to his brother, the disgust evident on Corax's face. The Raven Lord turned away, melting into the shadows again, when Corax evoked Sevatar directly. First Captain, that silky, miserable voice said. Does he believe it to be true, that your legion is a weapon of fear? He does, Sevatar replied. Do you believe it? Corax asked. Sevatar did not reply. I'd say many of the other legions see you as coteries of sadists and murderers, said Corax. His voice was completely isolated from the outside noise, and he spoke eerily into Sevatar's helm. So I ask you again, do you believe it? My lord Curze, Sevatar said stiffly, and severed the box. My lord Nighthaunter, what are your orders? Sevatar asked the question, hoping he would not be commanded to hunt down their allies. Let them go, said Curze sadly. Now is not the time for us to kill our brethren. Cold, dark dread rose through the choked channels of Sevatar's mind at those words. Sevatar was uneasy at his Primarch's declaration, and a headache pulsed behind his left eye. Curze even tried to break the tension with a joke, asking if Sevatar preferred crows to ravens. Sevatar did not understand jokes, and was relieved when Curze joined them to teleport back to their ship. My lord, you said now is not the time to kill our brothers, Sevatar said, after dismissing the others. I did, said Curze distractedly. He was examining the auditorium, as if seeing it as it was before, unmarked by war and the blood of his sons. Sevatar thought carefully before continuing, but caution had never been his strongest attribute. The phrasing you employed suggested to me that you have foreseen bloodshed. Is this the case? Curze stared at him, the black buttons of his depthless eyes threatening to swallow the first captain whole. I can tell you how you die if you wish, said Curze softly. Grave as a corpse-choked battlefield from whence all glory had fled. Do you want to know? It is far, far away from here, in the endless dark. No, said Sevatar firmly. I do not wish to know. Then never ask me questions like that again, Sev, said Curze. Your question and mine are different, but you are like the answer to neither much. The Great Crusade progressed, a near century of war, where none had seen the permanent twilight of their homeworld, Nostromo. The rot within the Legion was becoming worse, accompanied with the debilitating visions of Curze. Legionaries began to hunt serfs and human auxiliaries for sport in the lower decks of their ships. The endless torture of non-compliant worlds had gone from a necessary evil to a relished delight. All led by a distant father, all too willing to install the dread and tolls for pain, yet unwilling to pull in the reins of their worst excesses. The Great Crusade had battled for unending decades. The Emperor of Mankind's empire had almost spanned the entire galaxy. To the Primarch's inner sanctum, Sevatar was called. The hunched, gaunt figure of his Primarch looked directly into his eyes, a visage that would bring most to trembling dread. The Primarch claimed he knew what had to be done, and he knew he could share it with his most trusted sons. Between Sevatar and Curze's equerry, Shang, their Primarch's mental state was a closely guarded secret. Yet Curze preferred to confer his darkest plans with Sevatar before turning to Shang. Yea, the Legion has become infested by men who revel in the means, whilst losing sight of the end. They take pleasure in pain, and scoff at the notion of crime and punishment, Curze said. I had noticed. The timing of your realization could have been better, my lord, said Sevatar. And at a time our methods are under scrutiny like at no other. The Primarch shoved a ledger towards the first captain, so that it bumped against his helm. Sevatar glanced at the script written with a machine's precision, on leaves of handmade paper. Elements within the Legion have abetted the criminals of the homeworld. While I frothed and raved in my quarters, they have welcomed these degenerates into our ranks with open arms. All for power, Sevatar said immediately. You would think the elevation to a state far beyond the weakness of baseline man, and participation in the greatest venture the human race has engaged in, would be enough power for anyone. But what do I know? The motivations of other men mystifies me. What I see as idiocy, others embrace. Why do they not see power craves more power? It is a fool's hunger that consumes all until it eats the man that suffers it. It would amuse me if it weren't so dangerous. The pursuit of power within the hierarchy of the Legion is to be encouraged. To create structures outside of its structure is disloyal, replied Curze. I've already set in motion plans to curb the excesses of the worst. All captains suspected of involvement with the debasing of the standard of recruits are being questioned. Curze turned another page. Commendable, but call it off. Sevatar's slightly narrowed eyes were the only sign of puzzlement he permitted himself. Now that is an interesting stance to take. I assume you'll explain to me why. The Legion has to be brought back under control. A show of force is required. Curze flipped the book closed. Curze knew how deep the rot had gone. Those who ruled on Nostromo ignored him, leaving questions unanswered, and forcing the Primarch to learn about Nostromo's current situation from the Council of Terror. Powerful and loyal men like Balthius were overthrown or had given in to the corruption. In the eyes of Curze, his Legion was already poisoned, and the Primarch was determined to cut the problem from the root, much to Sevatar's surprise. You will not punish the Legion, but Nostromo. I intend to do more than punish it, said Curze. I will make an example of the light which none can ignore. Exterminatus, said Sevatar, flatly. Curze grinned. That is why I like you so much, Sev. I don't have to explain things to you. You grasp everything swiftly. And moreover, you understand why I do what must be done. If you say it must be done, then it must be done. We can only rely on our own fleet, said Curze. The others, my brothers, they would not understand. They would try to stop me. Months will be wasted while arguments are made and evidence presented. If I manage to convince them, they would attempt to force a new compliance. During this time, those responsible will flee Nostromo. By following the law, justice will not be done. If Nostromo must be destroyed, it shall be done quickly. Sevatar nodded, already making plans to prepare for the destruction of his home. Amongst the Legion, both Astartes and mortals would object. Sevatar knew. But with the Atramenta, any sign of rebellion against the Primarch would be utterly futile. Sevatar argued that Shang should not be told of this plan, yet Curze decided anyway. We shall see it done after Sharut. Before then, I have another task to perform. It is time I spoke to my brothers. Curze looked to his tarot cards. What will happen is unclear to me, but perhaps all this horror can be forestalled. Perhaps the rumors are inflated, and Nostromo might be saved, murmured Curze. Maybe Balthius is alive, and this situation can be rectified. Do you believe that? Sevatar asked. The Primarch's manner changed. Not for a moment, Sev. Curze's hair swung over his face, as he bowed his head over yet more damning evidence. Nostromo will burn. Fate and justice demand it. Sharut was a long and bitter war. 5 legions, 3 Primarchs and millions of mortal soldiers present. Months of brutal sieges and bloody assaults. Yet this would not be its legacy. Sharut would be remembered as the place where the cracks began in brotherhood and ideology. Sharut would see Rogel Dawn bloodied at the hands of Curze, and the Night Haunter fleeing into a future of further atrocity. The gilding of glory and honor looked for by Fulgrim's 3rd Legion would turn to tarnish. Curze sought their hope, a brother's help. His visions had only grown darker, but instead of aid, he faced accusations. On Sharut, the Night Haunter would come to haunt Rogel Dawn, as the Imperial Fist Primarch was almost slain at his brother's hands. Compliance had almost been achieved. The last bastion of enemy resistance was flittering out, yet Sigismund only saw the brutality unleashed by the Night Lords. The first captain of Dawn's Sons almost killed the Midnight Blue legionary he saw, were it not for the intervention of Fafnir. Jago Sevatarian appeared before his cousin legionary, his armor slick with the blood of innocents. Sigismund began to protest to Sevatar, yet nihilism and apathy was given back, from a scarred face pulled into a permanent arrogant grin. Sevatar made to turn, yet nothing to say, nothing to justify to this cousin, when Sigismund plunged his sword into the ground at Sevatar's feet. The midnight-clad warriors laughed. The death of a civilization around not enough to dull their twisted sense of humor. Sevatar stared at the sword. You don't want to do this, don't you? He smiled. Here and now, Sigismund demanded. All right, said Sevatar, rolling his eyes. He looked around as the cordon of Imperial Fists and Night Lords took hold.
We fight until one yields,
Sevatar called. Sigismund nodded. Agreed. The smell of the murdered city filled Sigismund's nose as he drew a breath. Only blows with weapons, said Ran. Sevatar raised an eyebrow, then shrugged.
They say you have played in the dog pits of the 12th, so I can understand it if you're worried he might have picked up bad habits. Can't have the Lord Templar in more grubby brawls than needed, can we?
Sigismund did not acknowledge the words.
Well then,
said Sevatar, stopping in his own stride, reaching down to pull the helm from where it hung at his waist and lower it over his head. A fanged skull gazed back at Sigismund from beneath a crest of crimson wings. The eye lenses lit.
Let's get this over with.
Sevatar moved. His chain star flicked out and then twisted into a cut. It was fast. Shockingly fast. Sigismund was already moving forwards, as he felt it clang from his blade as he parried. He turned the blow and thrust, shifting the sword from one hand, all his weight and speed behind the point of the blade. One hit, one kill, true and pure. Even without its power field, the blow would breach armor and punch into flesh, if it struck the right point. And Sigismund had seen the gap open above Sevatar's gut plate, the place where plates and cables joined, and the sword would ram into the torso, through bone and into the guts within. Not a mortal blow, not for a space marine, but a blow to end this now. Enough to wound, enough to leave a mark. But Sevatar was not there. An eye blink, and Sigismund felt his sword thrusting into space, pulling him forward as the chain staff whipped around, cutting across and up into his own midriff. He turned as the blow came at him, and went in close, guard high, as he read the spin of Sevatar's weapon. The two blades rang against each other. Cut after cut, as the sun rose and poured its rays through the veils of smoke. There had been cries and cheers at first. They had gone, replaced by silence. Cut and riposte, the two figures a spiral moving at the centre of a circle. And for Sigismund it seemed as though time and place had gone, as though the sun arcing above were rotating around this moment. And through this were the world, truth and lies, life and pain all found in the meeting of blades. A cut, a parry, the teeth of the chain glaive catching on the edge of the sword, enough to shear it wide, and the blur of the blow slicing into his legs. And the step that would pull him back, sword rising, thrusting into the gap that would come. The glaive coming to meet his cut, the sound of the chain motor gunning to life for a second, so that the cutting teeth spun his sword as the weapons met. The sword pivoting in his grip, shrugging off the deflection to cut. One cut, one kill, true and simple. The first truth he had learned from the sword. True unless the sword would not find its mark. Unless the enemy was like Sevatar. Cruel and uncaring of ideals, and deadly, and as fast as a snap of lightning between the storm cloud and ground. One moment, one mistake and it would be over. They duelled in silence. At first Sigismund thought Sevatar would talk, would throw words with his blows, but he did not. He simply fought, not with a sneer or a flourish, but with an intensity Sigismund had never felt, focused yet boiling, like the waves of a black ocean, like a storm that would never pass. From the moment their blades had locked, he had known that Sevatar would not fall quickly. So he had struck and struck, each time sharpening the edge in his mind, refining his feel for the timing of his opponent. Soon he would be able to make a single cut, a cut shaped like a key for a lock, and then this would be done. 1,000 cuts to create one. The sun was setting, red and fire orange through thinning smoke. Another cut from overhead, Another turn of his blade, another strike shearing off a parry, and there it was, opening before him, as though it were not him wielding the weapon that would strike, just observing it coming into being. He took a blow on his sword, felt the force shudder through his grip, felt the halberd slide to the crossguard, locked, and jerked the weapons for a second and then whined the blade, turning it into an overhead cut that would smash down onto Sevatar's face. Sevatar knew what was happening. Sigismund felt the realization like an electric shock of understanding passing between them, like a blast wave transmitted through water. He knew that in this moment he could not parry, could not bring the blade to strike. The eyes in Sevatar's faceplate were red coals in the dying light, caught in an unfolding instant that only they understood, brief and eternal. Sevatar dipped his head and rammed the crest of his helm up into Sigismund's face as the sword cut his faceplate, shattering the skull-plated ceramite and the red of an eye lens. Sigismund stepped back, spinning the sword into a guard. Sevatar retreated, pulling his helm from a bloody face. Sigismund could taste the iron on his own tongue. He felt the weight in his limbs now, rare for a space marine. He saw the scoring and chips on his armor. It was night, the light of a new dawn slipping above the teeth of the surrounding mountains. The city was quiet. The fires were gone and the corpse's smoke fading from the air.
First blood to me,
said Sevatar, grinning as his own blood ran down his face. You forfeit, called Ran.
Perhaps.
Shrugged Sevatar.
But I didn't lose.
He took a step closer so that his words were a whisper between them.
Next time, brother. Remember that even if people start out with honor, no one ends that way.
He grinned again.
Take it from me.
The Night Lord departed Sharut. Brothers had shed each other's blood, but Sharut's stain would be shadowed by an even greater crime. Shang had to find Sevatar, and fast. The war translations into Nostromo were violent. Men, servitors, and anything not bolted down was thrown about. There had been deaths. Shang found his mark in the Armory Temple. Every stone and metal in the temple was of umbral hue. Black light soaked the scene deeper into shadow, making the faces of the Atramentar preparing for battle shine unnatural colors, and their teeth gleamed like alien jewels. Across the chamber, the first company was being attended to by hundreds of serfs, preparing them for battle. Power tools whined, and diagnostic instruments chimed, echoing high into the blue-black marble ceiling. The Atramentar glared at Shang, but pointed him to Bay 14. Sevatar was halfway through his armoring process. Already his legs were clad in multi-layered armored plates of plasteel and ceramite. Terminator plate? Asked Shang. That is not your favored method of war. You are usually more subtle. I am master of the Atramentar, said Sevatar. Occasionally it suits me to fight with them, in their manner. We wouldn't want them to think I wasn't up to it. The Terminator chest plate was guided home. Bonding plugs clicked into position, followed by a hiss of pressurizing feed lines. I assume you haven't come down here to comment on my choice of garb. What do you want, Shang? The Equerry turned his head left and right, taking in the frantic level of activity. Lord Curze intends to go through with it, he said. Do you think it would be otherwise, Shang? Said Sevatar. In fact, forget it. Here's another question for you instead. Why do you feel the need to say such asinine things? I don't have time for your jibes, Diego, said Shang. Sevatar frowned. Don't call me that. I'll call you what I damn well please, First Captain. I am Equerry to the Primarch. Look at this. Look at what we are doing. We are about to wage war on our own homeworld. The dog can bark, but do you bite, Lord Shang? I say not. This is why Lord Curze favours me for this task. It is down to me to ensure that the punishment of Nostromo occurs. It was clear to Sevatar that Shang believed they were making a mistake. They were to condemn billions of innocents to death. Shang still held to his optimism. That Curze could be brought back from the brink. Sevatar couldn't stand his naivety, his hypocrisy. Nostromo was rotten. This was simply the consequences. The cutting out of the rot feeding this legion of murderers and torturers. Sevatar did not hold back his scolding. He despised the confident face, the equity he presented to the Primarch, and the worrying grandmother he acted to the rest of the Legion. Shang was perhaps the only Night Lord to only genuinely admire his Primarch, and that admiration was weakness. Shang was always certain until doubt took him, which is why Curze would always prefer Sevatar's counsel. Sevatar had murdered his doubt. Nostromo would burn in the name of justice, just like every other world burned into compliance. What has got into you? Hissed Shang. You sound like a fanatic, Sevatar. This isn't your way. The Sevatar I know is cynical, cold. He wouldn't see the sense in any of this. What do you know about my way? Said Sevatar. Nothing, because it is the way of the strong. Sevatar, I haven't come to you because you are the first captain, said Shang in exasperation. I come to you because you are the only other warrior who holds our master in his heart, the way I do. The others are jackals, or disillusioned if they once had honor. I am not weak. I am the only one who's strong enough to see that the Primarch is ill, and to voice it openly. Shang spoke quickly, aware he had limited time to convince Sevatar. He's beginning to lose his mind. You can't see it yet, but I can. You saw what he did on Sharut. The image of a frenzy-stricken, weeping Curze still haunted Sevatar. He had nearly killed a brother, one trying to help him in the throes of a haunting vision, and now the Night Haunter had fled to his home, not to dig himself in like a burglar might, but to utterly destroy it, in a manic episode of uncontrollable anger and desire for justice. To Shang, there were still facts to establish, an investigation to complete before passing judgment. Yet for Sevatar, the death of Balthius and the wars ripping through the hive cities were more than enough. In Shang, Sevatar saw the slow bureaucratic judgment of a trial that would let the criminals flee to commit their crimes in other worlds. In the eyes of Sevatar, Shang's words bordered on betrayal. Konrad Curze is not mad, said Sevatar, with deadly, threat-filled certainty. The look in his eyes belied the tone of his voice. For the Emperor's sake, Sevatar! No one is more devoted to the Night Lord than I! Shang gritted his teeth. His frustration growled from his voxmeter. He is not in his right mind. He is deteriorating. You see the ways he keeps to himself now, the darkness of his mood. If we allow this madness to continue, we will accelerate this malady. There'll be no turning back from this. You have no idea what he sees, none. Stop this now. I didn't think I would see the day, said Sevatar. Shang introducing our noble lord. Shang took the cheap bait. Listen to what I'm saying. Shang looked around with his desperate eyes, to the other hulking warriors. What do you say, Atramentar? This is your world. If your captain cannot see sense, perhaps you will. The Terminators remained unmoving. They think what I tell them to think, said Sevatar, amusement playing around his lips. They are the most loyal to the Primarch's vision. That is why they are the Atramentar. A position of honor you have never held for yourself, for obvious reasons. Sevatar's serfs finished shutting him into his plate, driving the last bolt home, so that he was fully encased from the neck down. "You are as insane as he is," said Shang. "I am not," said Sevatar. "I know what you are talking of. He is unstable, but he is not mad." "And why are you doing this?" hissed Shang. "Would you indulge me, Shang, by answering this simple question? The government of Nostromo has been usurped by criminals. The Hive Lords pay lip service to unity, whilst openly warring on each other. The streets are filled with screaming victims of violence. Misery is the sole experience open to the vast majority of the population. All are complicit in supplying our legion. This organization of the Emperor you hold in such high regard, with the worst examples humanity they can find." "How?" asked Shang. "How can the common people be held guilty for that?" "Oh, but they are," Sevatar replied. "Mothers are glad their sons remain at home. Friends are relieved their gangmates are not taken. Those not worthy are pleased that those who should be recruited are not. This is a crime of the whole society. Do you not agree?" Finally, Sevatar came to the truth of it. "Is the society of Nostromo guilty or innocent?" Shang did not answer, asking again for Sevatar to reconsider. Yet when pushed on the matter, he admitted Nostromo was guilty. A world so rotten to its core, it was the poison to the Legion. "The guilty deserve to be punished," said Sevatar. "That is the one immutable fact of our civilization. For without punishment there can be no civilization. This is what our Gene Father teaches us. We kill the few that the many can live, whether they be strangers or our own families." The serf stepped back. The helm descended, swallowing Sevatar's head. "Ave Dominus Nox," he growled through his suit of oximeters. "Gurnoth, Karesh, remain with Lord Commander Shang until the verdict has passed upon the homeworld." He lifted his arms, testing the armor himself. "Nothing escapes justice, Shang. Nothing should." The two Atramentar Sevatar had summoned clumped forward, standing either side of Shang. "I spare you the pain of taking part in this, seeing as you are so clearly undecided as to what is just and what is not." In a single command, the Night Haunter ordered the annihilation of his homeworld. Its declaration was met with stunned silence. Then the Vox burst with life. Several ships refused to obey the order, but their defiance was too late. The planet's defensive orbitals went first. The defensive lasers on the surface attempted to fire, but it was short-lived. Ship Mistress Ganesh was refused by her crew, and her own armsmen turned against her, even the lone Night Lord on the bridge. Illithen refused to act against the mutiny. Sevatar and two Atramentar teleported aboard the ship's bridge, demanding to know why they were not firing. When Ganesh reported the mutiny, she was relieved of duty with a single bolt round. Illithen, the lone legionary, too refused, his eyes not tearing away from the bloom fire tearing his home apart. Sevatar culled him. His first three mass reactives hammered into Illithen's chestplate, detonating without penetration. Illithen's aim was thrown wide, spraying out half a magazine of shots into the bridge. Sevatar's fourth bolt punched clean through the center of his chest, obliterating both his heart and killing him instantly. Silence reigned for a fraction of a second. Sevatar saw the Arnsman's intentions to fire before they knew they were going to do it themselves. "That is a regrettable move," he said, as gunfire erupted again. Sevatar watched Nostromo's death from the Shadowed Blade, the third vessel he had to bring to heal. Dozens of legionaries and thousands of mortals had died across the 50-strong fleet. Nostromo Quintus was ablaze from root to tip. Quintus had been Sevatar's and the Primarch's home. Close to the fault line Curze had made when his gestation pod had crashed into Nostromo. There was a weakness. There it all had begun, and here the Night Lords had poured their fury into. Sevatar had seen planets die before, and considered it eerily beautiful. Nostromo should have been different. It was the world where he was born. His family, his people, all came from those Hive City slums. His first tutoring, his first gang warfare, his first election into the Astartes. Sevatar wondered how the other Nostromans in the Legion felt, staring at the pyre of their home. He wondered if they experienced the stirrings of hatred towards their Primarch, or felt sorrow at the world's passing. He wondered these things because he felt nothing. Nostromo had erred, and it had been punished, and for many nights to come, he would hear the cries of the dead. Nostromo was a graveyard, its people and cities floating corpses like asteroids in space, and the Legion would be damned for it. The fleets of the newly raised War Master Horus burst into real space, alongside elements of the Salamanders and Imperial Fists. The horror of what the Eighth had done, falling on deaf ears of the tormented Curze. To terror the Legion was dragged. Before the Emperor, the chastisement began. They had failed. They disgusted him, for completing an act they had been doing for a century. Sevatar and the Legion felt it. The condemnation for tactics the Emperor and the Terran Council were all too happy to ignore. When world upon world had been brought into compliance, where had this sudden self-righteousness been? Into the fringes of space the Legion limped, embittered and enraged. After years of isolation, he had come to them, the War Master Horus. Sevatar heard his words, that the Emperor is a liar. He has lied about the war. He has gifted the success of the Great Crusade to mortal humans and bureaucrats. That one day he will purge his sons and legions, for a future where he ascends to godhood. Sevatar saw the look on his father's face, as if the events transpiring were of no surprise to him. Brimming with resentment, the 8th Legion pledged itself to the War Master, and prepared for the war where the galaxy would burn. Sevatar joined his Primarch aboard the Fidelitas Lex, as it hung above the world of Isstvan V. Upon Isstvan III, Horus had massacred the loyalist elements of his legion, declaring civil war as warp storms began to ravage the galaxy. At the head of a retribution force, 7 legions roared towards Isstvan V to destroy the sons of Horus, Emperor's children, World Eaters, and Death Guard. With the Iron Hands, joined by the Raven Guard and Salamanders in the first wave, the Night Lords took their place in the second, joined by the Word Bearers, Iron Warriors, and Alpha Legion, legions whose true loyalty was to the traitor War Master. Primarch Lorgar Aurelian stood at the head of the host. They were the forgotten, the betrayed and the misled, all united as traitors forged by their pact against the Emperor of Mankind. Argyltal of the Word-Bearers offered his hand to Sevatar, and the first captain took it, uttering the words that would ring throughout the millennia to come. Death to the false Emperor! The battle within the Ugal Depression was brutal beyond imagination. Hundreds of thousands of Astartes fought their once friends, as 3 loyalist legions were surrounded by the second wave. Teleporting deep into the Raven Guard lines, the betrayal was revealed, as Sevatar and the Atramentar began reaping a bloody toll. pinned down and surrounded. The Raven Guard and their Primarch fought desperately, the Primarch Lorgar Aurelian eventually succumbing to the Raven's lightning claws, until a matching pair halted the final blow. Black eyes stared into each other, as the Raven Lord was forced to retreat. What had begun as a brutal battle ended in a field of choking dead. They had their victory, yet the disgust could not be kept from Sevatar's face at the sight of the Wordbearers and Emperor's children. He could sense it. The warp was within them, and these new gods they called Chaos mutated their forms into sights that even surprised Sevatar. When Argyltal approached him in the ashes and blood-stricken field, Sevatar spat at his feet. He did not respect their corrupted forms, even if they fought on the same side. On the black sands of Isfahan V, the fraternity of the Astartes was broken forever. For 3 loyalist legions, it was already too late. The Raven Guard, Salamanders and Iron Hands were utterly shattered, driven away from Isfahan completely. The Imperium would be broken. Worlds would have to pick a side, either death to the false Emperor or annihilation. Warp storms cut off entire sectors, and loyalist legions were scattered. The galaxy would burn until Horus took his rightful place on the throne of terror. Isfahan V was a graveyard. Brothers, friends and comrades betrayed, as a traitor legion set out to burn the entire galaxy from the galactic rim to terror itself. The Wordbearers had begun their ambush at Calth, later joined in their Shadow Crusade by the World Eaters. The Alpha Legion began their Shadow War, as the Death Guard, Emperor's children, Iron Warriors and Sons of Horus reconquered the empire they had built. Every world they broke was one step closer to reaching the throne, and cleaving the Emperor's head from his shoulders. The fleets of the 8th Legion began their sail, this war bringing them to the Thramas sector, and began to strike at Lionel Johnson and his Dark Angels. A bitter guerrilla war erupted as mortals, Astartes and even 2 Primarchs bled each other dry over Thramas as the years began to pass. Yet for all their ambushes, even when Curze had defeated the Lion in their first clash, it became clear to Sevatar that the tide had begun to shift. Sevatar and Shang stood, mirroring their Dark Angel counterparts. Their Primarchs had come to the surface of a dead world, later coined Sagwalsa in the Nostraman tongue. The Lion, Primarch of the First, raised his blade in salute, following his traitorous brother Curze for a conversation the Night-Haunted had dared to allow. For 3 years the Thramas Crusade had burned the entire sector of Imperial space, yet only now the brothers met face to face. The 2 Night Lords had no need to introduce themselves, for their identities were known throughout the million-strong ranks of the Legiones Astartes. Both wore helms with painted skull faceplates. Both bore armor trophies of oversized skulls and Dark Angels' helms, hanging from their warplate on bronze chains. And both stood at ease, watching the warriors from the First Legion through red eye lenses. One of them leaned on the haft of a long halberd, a weapon he was renowned for. The other held a bolter at rest, a cloak of black weave draped over one shoulder and down his back.
You look familiar.
The first warrior spoke. He nodded his head towards Alejos.
We met at Kroon, did we not?
Alejos' voice barely rose above a growl. Aye, we did.
Yes, I recall the moment now.
The Night Lord chuckled, whisper soft, and mimed a 2-handed chop with his halberd. The deactivated chain blade atop the spear's haft was over a meter long, grinning in its still teeth.
I'm surprised you survived, Angel. It was careless of me to allow that. How's the face?
Causeway moved to rest his hand on his brother's bolter. He spoke over their helm box, so that the Night Lords wouldn't hear.
Be calm, Captain. Don't let him wound you with childish words.
Alejos nodded. He spoke as Corswain moved away. It has healed well. Your flawed carving did sting for several minutes afterwards, though.
That's good news. It is wise of you to wear your helm this time, cousin. The last time I saw your face, most of it was a wet ribbon of flayed flesh stuck to the ground beneath my feet. My brothers in the first company enjoy the tale, for it was the first time I've started to skin an angel while he was still alive.
Alejos grunted in reply, his hands faintly twitching with the need to raise his bolter and open fire. I will kill you, Sevatar. On my life, I swear it.
Cousin. I outrank you, do I not? That's first Captain Sevatar to you, little angel.
Peace, brother. Vengeance will come, and be all the sweeter for this moment.
Corswain voxed. This time, the cloaked warrior spoke. You, angel in the fur, do you know me? Corswain turned to them both. He felt the wind pick up, ruffling the white fur cloak around his shoulders. The skinned animal you wear as a trophy. I've never seen such a thing. What manner of creature is that?
It's the beast that never dies in my dreams.
Corswain grinned. Is that some crude Calibanite poetry? We had few poets in our homeworld, but their works would have made you weep. Our tongue lends itself to melodic prose very gracefully.
Naf sil shah, vovoren kalshiel.
Corswain said, in fluent Nostraman. Shang and Sevatar shared another laugh.
Your accent is brutal, but that was nicely done. It will be a shame to kill you both when the time comes. You have my oath here, on 8th Legion soil, that we will make trophies from your helms. You deserve nothing less.
How comforting.
Corswain chuckled with them.
I have a question of my own.
We are at your service, cousins.
Sevatar performed a mocking little bow.
Your gauntlets.
Corswain said, and left it at that. Sevatar held up his free hand, as he continued to lean on the halberd with the other. The gauntlet was at odds with his midnight armor, where the warplate was deep, dark blue and marked with streaks of lightning. His gauntlets were painted arterial red.
A mark of shame in our legion.
The Night Lord's voice still betrayed more amusement than regret.
A warrior's gauntlets are marked this way when he has failed the Primarch, gravely enough to warrant death. He will wear the stain of failure on his hands until his execution, at the hour of the Primarch's choosing.
Corswain watched the enemy captain through the filter the retinal target locks.
A curious custom.
Perhaps. But so is hiding your armor beneath cloth robes.
Corswain felt himself grinning again. Sevatar nodded.
A knightly tradition from our homeworld.
This is a gang tradition from ours. The hands of traitors and fools were tattooed red by their families to show them as death-marked. A sign that no gang or family would tolerate grave failure, but that the condemned still had labors to perform before they were allowed to die.
So which are you, a traitor or a fool?
The Night Lord's voice revealed his own smile, even if his soulless helm did not.
Both.
Forgive me, brother.
Curze tilted his head.
For what?
Corswain was watching both Primarchs, yet still never saw what happened. Such was the speed of the lion's movements. One moment the two brothers were speaking, the lion's features cast down in contemplation. Curze's eyes fever bright as he promised an ignoble fate. The next, Curze's features twisted into a taunt rictus of pain, blood running between his clenched teeth. The lion held tight the grip of his blade, buried to the hilt in his brother's stomach. More than a meter of shining, bloodstained steel thrust from the back of Curze's armor.
For such a dishonorable blow.
The lion whispered into Curze's pale, bleeding face.
I do not care who knows the truth now, tomorrow, or in 10,000 years. Loyalty is its own reward.
The lion pulled his sword free. The Night Lord fell back, and at the same moment, the chain blade atop Sevatar's halberd snarled to life. Above Sheol 9, the hulking vessels of the First Legion burst from their ambush, tearing the Night Lord's fleet apart, as a near quarter of the Legion began to perish in mere minutes. Sevatar took command, launching out defensive strikes, doing everything in his power to prevent his Legion's destruction. The Night Lords were ruthless murderers, embodying everything it meant to be a Lord of the Night. But the Dark Angels, they were the true embodiment of what it meant to be an Angel of Death. The true Primarchs had clashed again, with the Lord of the First nearly bludgeoning his gaunt brother to the grave. An entire company died dragging their broken Lord back. And now their Primarch was on the edge of death. The Legion's fleets had been scattered. The vacuum of power was a chasm, and one that needed to be filled. The Cryptera, the chosen of Curze, gathered in the dim-lit strategium. Of the 7 members, only Sevatar, Selharek, Varjahan, and Melithos Kun still lived. Sevatar entered last, placing his chain glaive upon the table, as the others stared wearily. 2 of the 3 voices cried for vengeance, to regroup the Legion, and throw themselves back into the heat of battle. So many pretty words tonight, yet they all miss the point. The Legion is better suited to the shadows, until we are ready to strike in force. Then we butcher, then we taste their blood. The angels just taught us a stern lesson in the foolishness of gathering together in one place and trying to engage them in a fair fight. Sevatar leaned on a support pillar, crossing his arms over his chestplate as he continued. I'll be absolutely clear, since you are all so reluctant to take the hint. I will not let you take the Legion back into this war after such a crippling defeat. That's all there is to it. I will take the Atramentar, along with any of the companies that choose to stand with me, and rejoin the War Master's fleet. There is nothing more we can do here, and I say that delaying the Dark Angels for more than 3 years is long enough. I am finished with the Thramas Crusade. I am taking my company to Terra. I plan to see the real war before the final day dawns. The rest of the Legion should come with me. I may lose my temper if you try to keep fighting this meaningless war. Don't make me kill you. My weapon is all the way over there. The Cryptera grumbled, and only when the first captain left did they voice their open treachery. A squad of Atramentar Terminators teleported into the room. Melithos and Selharek were slaughtered in seconds, Varjahan the only one still to draw breath. Sevatar liked the fact he had caught on, and almost escaped. It amused him. Why did you kill them? Varjahan moved, so his back wasn't facing the Atramentar. Why did you want us dead? Fratricide, brother. Has it really come to this? We came to this the moment you 3 fools decided it was best to kill the Legion, simply to expunge some imaginary stain in our imaginary honor. But the preparation, Varjahan wheezed. I had a feeling the Crypteria would need reorganizing. I was right. You killed them because they disagreed with you? Sevatar, are you insane? The first captain gave a subtle shrug. So I am often told. What matters is that the Legion needs the Crypteria now more than ever. And we will not lead our Legion back onto the Dark Angel's blades. But the War Master... Sevatar's hand was at his throat before the sentence could end. The first captain lifted him, slamming him back against the wall. Do I look like I care what the War Master wants of me? Sevatar's skull faceplate bore into Var Jahan, with its crimson eye lenses. We never cared what the Emperor wanted of us. Why should we waste our lives here in the back end of the galaxy, dancing to the War Master's tune? He released Var Jahan, walking back into the chamber. He has leashed us for 3 years. I am done with obedience. To the abyss with Horus and his arrogant whims. He is no better than the Emperor. Sevatar thought he would feel something, staring at the mutilated body of his father. He caught a glance at the Primarch's severed throat, the flesh knitting in ragged cohesion, while the entire chamber reeked of spilt blood. There was something raw and primal in the scent, something beyond the coppery smell of human life. To Sevatar, such emotion was beyond him. He'd never mourned anything or anyone. He knew others did. His brothers cried at this moment. He knew the Lunar Wolves did the same when Horus was injured. And on Isfahan, he'd fought Iron Hands, overcome with grief and rage at the death of Ferris. But yet his father, Konrad Curze, the Night Haunter, could die right before him, and Sevatar wasn't sure he cared. The Primarch's personal archivist voxed the first captain. Sevatar moved to Curze's personal sanctum. The room was filled with corpses and scenes of horrific crimes to make even Sevatar uncomfortable. He questioned why the archivist wanted him to come. "You have never understood the man you serve," the mortal had said, without looking up from his work. "None of his warriors ever have. Does that not seem like a risible flaw to you, Yago?" Yago, thought the first captain. My name is Sevatar. Indeed, indeed. Trez smoothed his thinning white hair back from his cratered features, arranging a piece of parchment on the desk until it was placed so. He read the words from the cream-coloured paper, between rebreather wheezes. Yago Sevatarian, born in City's Edge, first captain of the 8th Legion, commander of the Atramentar, officer of the Crypteria, also known by the name Sevatar the Condemned, and... Trez snorted, shaking his head, and by the rather amusing title, Prince of Crows. Sevatar removed his helm, with a snap hiss of air pressure venting from unlocked collar seals. He breathed in the chamber's abattoir smell, his expression thoughtful. I'm not sure I like your tone. The last man to sneer at me like that soon wished he hadn't. Little archivist. Oh, Trez looked up. Curiosity writ plain across his weathered visage. And who might that have been? I don't recall his name. I was given to understand all warriors of the Legiones Astartes were gifted with eidetic recall. A hololithic memory, if you will, said Trez. We are, Sevatar admitted. I just never asked his name. I was rather preoccupied with skinning him alive at the time. Now tell me what you want from me, Trez. I doubt you've mistaken me for someone framed with the virtue of patience. The old man's grin showed a blunt arsenal of age-darkened teeth. You'll need patience if you wish to lead this legion, said Trez. Sevatar laughed, drawing the spicy, meaty scent of unrefrigerated cadavers into his lungs. Even you are sure Lord Curze will die. Even you, his devoted little ape creature. have given him up as dead. Whatever will you do once you can no longer eat the mud from our master's boots, Trez? It would grieve me to see you starve to death." The archivist went back to his parchments, still smiling into his rebreather. "I know your secret, Jaego. I have no secrets," Sevatar replied. Trez ran his fingertips over the Nostraman lettering, his fingers following the flows of inked words. "He told me, Jaego. He tells me everything." Sevatar tilted his head, black eyes unblinking. "Why do you hide from slumber, First Captain? Why do you force yourself to remain awake for weeks on end? Why, if you have no secrets, do you wake up with cold blood flowing through your pounding heart on the rare nights you surrender to sleep?" Sevatar's hand lashed out, choking the man. Yes, he knew what he spoke of, and he didn't need the help of a pathetic psyker like him. Sevatar released the old man, eventually, letting him choke on his hubris. Sevatar reached for his helmet as he walked away. "I don't need your help." Trez cleared his throat. "It isn't working anymore, is it? The training, the meditation. You can't hold the pain inside the way you once could." Sevatar didn't even look back. "You know nothing, human. You're lying, Jaego." Sevatar masked his white face beneath the skullish helm. His voice was a vox-altered snarl. "I am the son of the sunless world. An 8th Legion to my core. Of course I'm lying, Trez. It's what we do." Within a chamber aboard the ruined Nightfall, Captains Orphean, Kuresh, Torvak Tor, Naraka, Alastor Rushal and Var Jahan stood, each in turn voicing their surprise at Sevatar's summoning. When they had first met, Sevatar wanted to ensure there be no lies amongst the new council. A mere third of the Legion had regrouped. The rest were still scattered or dead. Var Jahan commanded the 27th Company, a Terran-born and skilled tactician who Sevatar deeply liked, although he had no idea why. Next was Nakra the Bloodless of the 13th Company, a warrior with a dark history that was even hidden from other legions and most of their own. But Sevatar knew of it and respected him for it. Torvak Tor of the 114th, known as the Lackhand. He joined the Legion alongside Sevatar. Both came from the same gang, and Lackhand did so while being born with only one hand. Captain Orphean of the 39th. He had failed to distinguish himself beyond the other captains, but he was a solid frontline commander, and even one of the few Night Lords who could be considered brave. Surprisingly useful, Sevatar thought. Kuresh had earned his position by killing his previous commander. The last of their gathering, Alastar Rushal, a Terran veteran of the Raven Guard, a prisoner of Sevatar from the killing fields of Isfahan, one broken and reformed by Sevatar's personal hand. He stood alone and unmarked. Sevatar nodded to Alastor, before addressing the group as one. "You will help me lead this broken legion. You are now the Crypteria of the Night Lords. Any questions?" Several of the others exchanged glances. In the corner, Trez's rebreather hid his smile. Tovak was the one to actually speak. "That's your greeting? That's how you welcome us?" "Yes." Sevatar didn't blink. "Did you expect a speech?" "I don't know what I expected," Torvak replied. "Then why do you sound disappointed?" Sevatar tilted his head. "Any real questions?" "I have one," said Orphean. His face was a mess of recent stitches and skin grafts. Why us? Because the rest of the Crypteria are dead, with Var Jahan and myself the only survivors. Sevatar replied. Obviously. But how did they die? Orpheon asked. The Dark Angels killed some of them. I killed the rest. Or rather, the Atramentar killed them. Because I asked them to. Orpheon snorted, not even remotely surprised. But why us? Orpheon asked. Sevatar watched the other captains in silence for several moments. You are a very suspicious man, Orpheon. That I am. Sevatar saw no harm in the truth. You are all variously loyal to me, intelligent, reliable, trustworthy, and divorced from the weakness of human compassion. The Legion needs leadership. It needs us. Then I'll be the one to say it. Koresh gestured a gauntleted hand at Alastair. His skullish face locked into a sneer. Why is the Raven here? He leads no company. He commands no men. He cannot be one of the Crypteria. He can. Because I say he can. Unless the Primarch rises and countermands my order, the Raven stands with us. Now to business. Sevatar called up the hololithic display again. What you're looking at, brothers, is over a third of the Legion's fleet. We've had contact with the other mustering points at Yakresh, Taur and Sotha. The casualty figures are on the wrong side of Hilarious. Don't keep us in suspense, Var Jahan grunted. The Dark Angels destroyed just over 25% of the fleet in their ambush. They killed a quarter of the Legion in 3 hours. The new Crypteria exchanged glances. None of them wished to say anything, leaving Sevatar to continue. It's only been 2 weeks. There may be 7 dozen vessels still in the warp, or caught away from the fallback points, but the confirmed casualties alone are grievous. Every shipmaster saw the other vessels die. Collating that list shows a fifth of the Legion dead in the void, or on the surface of Sheol. So, Sevatar turned back to his brothers. The question now is, what do we do? Revenge, said Var Jahan. Vengeance against the Angels. Don't make me kill you as well. Sevatar bit. Revenge against the First Legion will be a fool's crusade. I am striving to make this as democratic as possible, but don't try my patience. Koresh tapped his knuckles on the hololithic table. What of the Primarch? Still in a coma, replied Var Jahan. Aboard the excoriator. What is the meaning of? Nakra gave the vaguest of waves at the bodies hanging all around. Of all of this? This, said Sevatar, is the result of our Primarch's little telepath no longer doing his job. Isn't that right, Trez? The old man blinked, sucking in a gulp of oxygen through his face mask, as the 7 warriors slowly turned to face him. His stammered attempt at a response went nowhere. It barely even left his lips. The Sin Eater is failing us? Asked Nakra. So it would seem, replied Sevatar. My lords, Trez swallowed. We are my lords now, Sevatar chuckled. I was as Jaego earlier. My lords, please. Before the ambush, Lord Curze's dreams were becoming too poisoned. Too dark. I struggled to purge them of the pain. Koresh stood closer to the wizened archivist. His cadaverous visage stared down at the man. Are you failing your duties, little psyker? Trez begged for his life, and the new Crypteria almost took it, until Sevatar waved them off. Leave me, Sevatar barked. Even you, Valzen. Clear the apothecarian. I want every soul gone. Captain, the apothecary tried to say, but Sevatar cut him off. I have an idea that may bring him back. Sev, I have to stay. You can't expect me to leave. I expect you to do as I order. Sevatar softened the demand with a hand on Valzen's shoulder guard. And I expect you to trust me, brother. Begrudgingly, the three apothecaries all left. So this is why you have brought me, the archivist said. His voice echoed hollowly around the empty room. Curze lay still on the apothecary's table. His frame, usually hunched, gave an animal-like quality, but now it looked even worse to Sevatar's eyes. The bitter duels with the lion, the strain of commanding a guerrilla void campaign across the length and breadth of the Eastern Fringe for 3 years had taken their toll, even upon a mind already debilitating. He was not created for this type of war, even though he excelled at it. No, he was a justicar, a judge, a man born to look traitors and thieves in the eyes as he delivered their sentence. And now, what had he become? A general, an admiral, a monster even. A war leader buried beneath logistics and tactical displays, cast out to languish with his sons at the far end of the galaxy. Worse, he was a traitor now himself. Sevatar had seen his Primarch's desperation, the degeneration. There was one last chance, a path that required him to step into the secret shame of his existence. This will probably kill you, Jaego. Sevatar nodded to Trez's words. I know. The archivist sucked in a wet breath. You have the strength for this, but not the control. I know, Sevatar said again. But I have to try. I don't want him to die, Sevatar said with surprise. He looked down at his crimson gauntlets, painted as evidence of his sins, or his sins yet to come. I failed him once already. I won't let it happen twice. Trez sighed, 2 droplets of condensed breath specking on the inside of his rebreather. There's no going back from this. If you unlock the gift you fought so hard to forget, some doors cannot be closed. Sevatar was barely listening now. I already struggled to restrain it, he said, his voice barely carrying over the humming of the ceiling air vents. Will you help me? I can't do this alone. The old man limped over on a creaking spine and shin-splintered legs. He reached out with a hand blighted by liver spots and the tremors of flaring arthritis, and closed his knuckly fingers around the back of Sevatar's red gauntlets. The first captain lowered his hand, resting his fingertips on his father's forehead. You said he wasn't dreaming, Trez. Sevatar spoke aloud, dead-voiced and staring at nothing. You were wrong. Nostromo, painted in the brush strokes of hazy memory. The mad Primarch dreamed of doom, or the first time he saw the Emperor of Mankind. He saw his brothers, Rogel Dawn, Lorgar Aurelian, Ferrus Manus and Fulgrim, all there surrounded by their sons in a crowd of people perfectly frozen in time. The Night Haunter turned, seeing a figure clad in ceramite the colours of clean midnight. The armour plates cracked by painted lightning. The warrior stood alone, watching in silence, his black eyes never judging, never accusing. Sevatar, the Night Haunter said to the staring warrior. You shouldn't be here. Sevatar approached his Primarch, looking at the frozen crowd, but still making sure to avoid the Emperor. Memory or not, the last time he looked upon the Master of Mankind, he was in the Apothecarian for 7 weeks, and almost demanded augmetic eyes in frustration. Curze's features were soured into a shark's grin. Sevatar's intrusion clearly unwelcome. Primarch and son began walking through the memory, passing columns of Emperor's children under the twilight skies of a world they had murdered. "You shouldn't be here," the Primarch said again. "Not because this is private to me. I do not care about that, Sev." "Then why not?" Sevatar asked. "You know why not," Curze chuckled. The sound's no different from a lizard choking on dust. "In a single night you've undone decades for suppressing your talent." Curze looked back over his shoulder, at his son following close behind. "Your psyche is no longer guarded. I can read you, in a way I've not been able to do for years. I can see through your barriers, for they are no longer barriers at all." Sevatar knew what this was building to. "I don't want to know." "Yes, you do. Everyone does." Curze looked ahead again, turning to move between an isolated phalanx of Ultramarines. "I asked you not to tell me back then, sire." Sevatar followed, his face darkening. "Please keep to our former agreement." "No." Curze gave his dusty chuckle again, wind rasping through a tomb. "You die in battle." Sevatar swallowed. "That's hardly surprising, Lord. I've no desire to know the rest." Sevatar began to speak of the Legion shattering, his desire to lead his forces to terror. As still they walked, until Sevatar finally voiced the question that had plagued him for over a century.
Why do you hate us?
Sevatar asked it quietly, carefully, with no hint of offense or malice. The words still stopped Curze in his tracks, causing him to turn. The long blades curving from each of the Primarch's knuckles reflected the golden light of the Emperor's halo, several streets away.
"What?"
Sevatar spoke just as casually as before.
Why are you the only Primarch to hate his own Legion? What have we done to you?
Curze smiled, barely.
"I spoke with Angron and Lorgar not long ago. They told me of their purges, cleansing the untrustworthy elements from the 12th and 17th. I laughed when they said it, at the sheer absurdity of the idea. They knew exactly when to stop the killing of the weak, the treacherous, and the corrupt within their bloodlines. I wouldn't even know where to begin culling mine."
Sevatar snorted in dismissal.
On another day, sire. Such words might hurt my feelings.
"Look around you. You were born on this world. You grew to adulthood here just as I did. The Emperor praised me for my rule over this world. Even Fulgrim admired it. A model of compliance. An obedient world, they said. Were my people happy? Did that even matter? I made these people human despite their feral drives. I made them civilized despite their baser instincts. I raised them above the level of beasts. That was my responsibility to them as a superior being, and I fulfilled it."
Curze looked to the grey spires, rising in every direction, and the frozen smog from the foundries and manufactorums, veiling the spire tops in a haze of polluted smoke.
"And see how my people rewarded me. I was gone only a handful of years before everything soured. My own homeworld poisoned my Legion with recruits who were worthless as soldiers, violators, murderers, thieves, the scum, the dregs, the detritus."
Sevatar almost laughed.
Sire, you are no different. The Legion is disorderly and vile, because it is cast in your image.
No.
Curze drenched the single syllable in regret.
No, you don't understand. I've never claimed to be perfect, Sevatar. But I became the sinner, the monster, the night haunter, so my people would never have to. And look at the result. Look at the recruits from Nostromo, less than a decade after I departed. Look at the filth they sent me. Look at the disgusting dregs of humanity my own apothecaries infused with my genetic material and reforged into transhumans. The 8th is poisoned, Sev. Generations of men who are murderers in my image, yet devoid of my conviction. They are killers and abusers because they want to be, not because someone had to be. Fear is supposed to be the means to the end. Look at the bloodshed my Legion has wrought these last years, even before the crusade was done. Fear became the end itself. It was all they desired. They fed on it. My sons were strong, so they bled the weak for their own amusement. Tell me, Captain, where the nobility is in that.
Where is the nobility in any of this?
Sevatar gestured to the streets of Nostromo Quintus around them.
You can claim savage nobility, Father, but this is far more savage than noble.
Curze's pale lips peeled back from his filed teeth.
There was no other way.
Sevatar answered his father's snarl with a grin.
No? What other ways did you try?
Sevatar.
Answer me, Father. What politics of peace did you teach? What scientific and social illumination did you bring to the society? In your quest for a human utopia, what other ways did you try beyond eating the flesh of stray dogs and skinning people alive?
It was the only way.
Sevatar laughed again.
The only way to do what? The only way to bring a population to heel? How then did the other Primarchs manage it? How has world upon world managed it, without resorting to butchering children and broadcasting their screams across the planetary Voxnet?
Their worlds were never as serene as mine was.
And the serenity of yours died the first second your back was turned. So tell me again how you succeeded. Tell me again how this all worked perfectly.
You overstep your bounds first, Captain.
How can you lie to me like this? How can you lie to yourself? I stand here inside your mind, witnessing a theater of your own memories. Your way is the 8th Legion way, now, but it has never been the only way, just the easiest way. You enjoy this way. You came to love it, just as we all did. The power, the righteousness.
Get up, Sevatar. Leave me be.
Sevatar narrowed his eyes.
I am going nowhere, sire. Not without you.
Curze smiled. His son could see that much, at least.
I admire your tenacity, I always have. But you are a shadow of what I am, Sevatar. You cannot match me. Go.
No.
Sevatar filled his lungs. The sterile air viciously cold as he drew it in. Trez released his hand. The Primarch slumbered before them, scarred from the lion's blade. His other senses filtered back into life. He smelled the bleachy, chemical reek of the apothecarian, a smell which could never quite hide the scent of fresh blood. He heard Trez's laboured breathing and the beat of the old man's heart. Then he heard the sirens. They had found them again. Sevatar didn't have time to wipe the blood pouring from his nostrils. He darted into the nearest corridor. bludgeoning through any crew unfortunate to bar his way. "This is Sevatar to fleet. Let me be clear, brothers and sisters. I am not losing to these pious, deluded, rag-wearing whoresomes twice in the same month. Focus all fire on the invincible reason. They crippled our Primarch. Let us return the favor. I need at least 50 ships willing to remain for the attack." Orpheon was the first to announce his refusal to flee. Sevatar knew his temperament, but when Marchand did not reply to the order, Sevatar grew concerned. "Marchand, brother," the voice crackled back. "I ordered the Crypteria to run. You can't risk the Primarch in this fight. Get clear of the battle with a dispersing fleet." Sevatar had expected argument from the veteran. Perhaps yet another grunted complaint about authority. "Sevatar, there's... Lord Curze is stirring." "Is he awake? Can he stand? Can he fight?" "No." "Then it changes nothing. Send Valzen back to the Nightfall before you break away. I trust your apothecaries to watch over Lord Curze. I need mine back here." "It will be done. Good hunting, Sevatar." Sevatar glanced back at the hololith, at the spread of so many ships, friend and foe alike. The Night Lord's fleet broke apart, scattering in all directions and heedless of destination. Something about witnessing his legion scatter made Sevatar melancholic. He knew this would be the last time that the Eighth would be gathered in such a large force. It made the most tactical sense, a choice perfect for the Legion's method of war. But Sevatar could not help but feel a tang of regret, that perhaps this was the last days of the Night Lords. The Dark Angel's fleet outnumbered them 8-1, yet still Sevatar's ship plunged forward, drawing their ire. A thought gave Sevatar pause. How did the Lion manage to jump his entire armada with such frightening efficiency? How did they know where they were? He placed the concern to the back of his mind when he noticed the excoriator, still carrying the wounded Konrad Curze, suddenly stopped moving. He voxed Marchand immediately, but the connection remained silent. "Time until maximum weapons range?" Sevatar asked. 29 seconds, Captain," a human serf called out. "All hands, brace for incoming fire. Cripple every ship we pass. But be ready for the flagship. I want everything, aimed at the invincible reason. Kill her and we can leave Thramas with our heads held high." Soon, both sides found themselves ignoring every convention of void warfare, in favor of sheer brutality. The Invincible Reason and Nightfall, two Indomitable Gloriana-class battleships, came at each other almost like wild animals instead of the long-range weapons platforms they were created to be. Cruiser escorts were swept aside by the Nightfall, as it killed its way through towards its target. The Imperium had always preferred its void battles at extreme distances. Mathematics and logistics carried the day as much as a captain's instinct. But just as every other tenet of Imperial superiority, it was broken by this heresy. The Nightfall had punched a hole through, and the other 8th Legion ships roared in pursuit of their crumbling flagship. Rage ruined all need for subtlety and tactics. The two flagships, amongst the largest and most heavily armed creations ever to rise from the collective genius of the human race, speared closer with no regard for their support craft. Sevatar watched the spread of the ocular screens, each one alive with an image of ships dying in the dark, black steel breaking apart, ghost fire vanishing into the void. Sensitive Nostraman eyes winced close across the bridge, as one of the screens showed the warship Tenebror die, its prow wreckage, still hemorrhaging debris and crew. In its dying breath it sent a lance through the rear of the Primarch, igniting the Dark Angel's vessel's warp engines and detonating the entire ship in a migraine of foul light. No matter the destruction, the 50 Night Lord vessels refused to deviate or divert from their plan. The fleet had carved their way through towards their target, and the invincible reason began to take scoring wounds. But Sevatar felt the hope from whatever surging momentum they had die, as he saw the excoriator surge forward to face the enemy's flagship alone. The ship carrying Konrad Curze ignored everything, enemy ships firing on it, other 8th Legion vessels demanding it fall back into formation. Sevatar watched it roll, wounded to the point of being held together by nothing more than spite. He could tell from his trajectory that it wasn't even aiming to ram one of the enemy ships. It was just dying. A drawn-out, graceless dive through the enemy fleet, breaking their formation. Sevatar sighed. Despite the tremors rattling the strategium, he calmly sat down on the Primarch's throne and rested his cheek on his crimson-gauntleted knuckles. A shame, really. It had been a good plan. He wiped the blood from his face again, this time from his jawline, below his ear. How very vexing. The British Fox hissed back to life with several false starts. "Sevatar," said a deep, distorted voice, bare of any emotion beyond the faintest, oily amusement. "Welcome back, Father," Sevatar replied. "We can finish this now." "Join me," said the Night Haunter. "Let me guess," replied Sevatar. "You plan to teleport on to the invincible reason, don't you?" "I have to finish this fight," Curze replied. "Yes," said Sevatar, reaching for his spear. "Of course you do. Does it matter not that in a handful of minutes we can punch through the Angel's rearguard and rip into the war?" The answer was several seconds incoming, preceded by the muted shouts of dying humans aboard a burning ship. "Come with me. Bring the Atramentar. Finish this at my side," said the Primarch. Sevatar looked out over the bridge, elevated above the crew on a raised dais. "This is why the Imperials always win," Sevatar mused aloud. "They don't get in each other's way. Discipline may be dull, but it has undeniable military application." Sevatar stood, and stalked from the bridge with only one final command to the crew. "I may be gone a while. Try not to get my ship killed." "You can't be serious," the pilot voxed. Sevatar stalked along the back of the fighter, mag-locking his boots to the wraith's dark skin a few meters behind the cockpit. He shook his head at the Naviseer's moronic expression of shock. "I said, go!" Sevatar crouched low, taking 3 punches to smash a deep dent into the fighter's hull, just enough to grip the edge. He kept his spear held behind his back, angled away. The fighter thrummed beneath his boots, coming alive again. "Sevatar, this is insane!" the pilot voxed. Sevatar rolled his black eyes behind the red eye lenses. How tiring it was to hear those words again. Sometimes he wondered if duty was just a word to other people, and they never truly grasped its meaning. "Get me to the invincible reason," he voxed. "My men are fighting aboard, and I'll die before I send them into a battle I wouldn't join myself." He was Atramentar. His brothers were Atramentar. There was nothing more to say. Through a streaming tide of 1st Legion fighters, a sun in midnight clad rocketed towards the flagship of the Lion. Sevatar felt nausea for the first time in over a century, which was novel enough to make him grin. The pressure against his skull and limbs, however, was less entertaining. A ship in scorched grey roared into the landing bay. In its ruined state, the ship was mistaken for one of the 1st Legion. But that notion ended when it blasted apart the closest munitions officer. Armsmen opened fire using shot cannons, but not one of them could hit their target. Sevatar's bolter began barking as he dived off the wing. Even when faced with the warrior of the Legiones Astartes, the armsmen kept fighting. Sevatar wanted to cut and kill his way through them, but he knew he did not have the time. He sprinted out of the hangar, finally connecting to his company's Vox web. "Ladies," he greeted them, still sprinting. "Where in the hell have you been?" spat back the first voice. Several others joined in, sharing the sentiment. "You have no idea," Sevatar replied. "Where is the Primarch?" "The Primarch is engaged at the 15th concourse," Balzan replied. "Half of us are here with him." The 15th concourse. Sevatar knew the STC Gloriana pattern battleships, as well as he knew the contours of his own armor. The Nightfall was born of the same breed. The boarding action had turned into madness. Every Dark Angel left alive and the ship would rush to that position. It had plenty of angles of attack, and was impossible to defend with a single company of Terminators, even if they were the elite Atramentar. Sevatar would be with them in 7 minutes. 8 if he encountered resistance. 9 if the resistance carried bolters. Boarding an enemy warship was like laying siege to a castle, but worse. Corridor by corridor, chamber by chamber. An attacker could spend half an hour encountering no resistance, beyond confused serfs and ignorant servitors. At the same time, they could spend just as much time having to fight for every footstep they took. On a ship like the Invincible Reason, most resistance carried bolters. Squads were dug in, harrying an assault force with everything they had. It was the type of combat where Terminator armor was best. Sevatar was getting close. The trail of his brother's devastation was almost hilarious, in its absolute severity. On more than one deck, Sevatar's boots splashed through a marsh of shallow blood and carved human meat. The 8th Legion elite were making progress, but the Dark Angels weren't beaten, not even close. Even with the Atramentar sweeping these decks clear, reinforcements were flooding in from other parts of the ship, storming their way to the Strategium to defend their Primarch. Sevatar cut his way through serfs, and already several Dark Angels. One of them had even earned a spot in Sevatar's trophy rack, the highest honor the Night Lords could give their enemy. At the junction ahead, another 3 Dark Angels in pale tabards over their heraldic black held the line, bolters kicking in their fists. Sevatar crouched behind the relative cover of a corner, reloading his own weapon, lip curling as he crunched home his last magazine. He was pinned. He would have enjoyed cutting them down with his chainglaive, but his bolter made the fight equal. That is, as long as he had the ammunition. Just like his brothers, he never cherished a fair fight. Sevatar could at least enjoy the sport of it, but when he looked around the corner, he found himself cursing. The Dark Angels recognized him. The accursed helmet crest. Always that damn crest that made enemies recognize him. From Isvan to all over Thramas, warriors called out to him, shouting his name in challenge. Suddenly, the gunfire fell silent, replaced with the strangled grunts of something hard smashed ceramite. When Sevatar looked, he saw the Raven, Alastar Rushal. Sevatar leapt forward, chainglaive spinning as he carved apart the last standing warrior. Sevatar stomped on his throat, and when another reached a weak hand against his greave, he put a bolt between his eyes, not even bothering to look up. "You won't believe how I got here," he said to Rushal. The Raven didn't reply. He hadn't replied to anything since Isfahan 5, for it was difficult to speak without a tongue. Sevatar had witnessed a minute part of the Legion's most vile atrocities, but what he saw next was enough to make him breathless, and even laugh at its majesty. The 15th Concourse was a thoroughfare of many hubs, centered on the upper command decks. Dead serfs had decorated the tunnel on his way here, but the scale of the massacre taking place made it look insignificant. The Atramentar and the Night Lords from the Excoriator were knee-deep in the dead, fighting amidst the piling bodies of serfs, servitors, armsmen and dark angels, and even their own slain brothers. They fought back to back in diminishing circles, fighting to the last against a tide of Dark Angel reinforcements, advancing from every tunnel. He'd never seen a weaker last stand in a less defensible position, but the reason was clear enough. Here the Primarchs had met, and here their battle raged. Space Marines, no matter the Legion nor Allegiance, were hard-pressed to abandon their gene sires, and so the Night Lords and Dark Angels tore into each other. No quarter was given, while the Primarchs above them mimicked the same violence. Bolters and Chainblades screamed, crashed, and Ceramite was slowly rent apart. It was the first time since Isfahan V that Sevatar saw his Primarch reclaim his lost glory. Curze was not regal, handsome, dignified, or healthy. His glory was a stark contrast to his brother's. He was starved, sickly, and his majesty was something cold and cadaverous. His sickle-shaped claws sighed out from each finger. He moved like an avatar of liquid grace, but with the jerking of a puppet controlled by an unseen and malicious sentience. Sevatar had seen Primarchs fight before. Curze fought with the same energy and grace as when he first joined the Great Crusade. For Sevatar, the Lion's movements were clinical, a ruthless economy of muscle and motion, each thrust and parry executed to perfection, without the audacity of dramatic flair. Curze's jerked assaults were a flailing of clawed hands, each potential embrace blocked by a long blade, and then turned aside by the next. Sevatar could have watched the entire fight and enjoyed it, but Rushal's meteor hammer crashing into an enemy dragged Sevatar's attention back to his own fight. There were 20 corridors, and the Dark Angels were still pouring in, swarming the Atramentar and Var Jahan's warriors. Sevatar leapt forward, jumping down from a gantry and smashing boots first into the melee. He cut down his first foe, head severed with a single sweep of his chain glaive. Another warrior lost his hand and then most of his head. A third and fourth were disemboweled in a single swing. And then Sevatar noticed it was happening again. Was he simply faster than everyone else, or were they slower? No matter the opponent he faced, he felt them betray themselves in subtle ways. It was as if Sevatar saw their movements before they actually happened. He blocked the strikes that came for him, and dealt out his own murderous lashes. The unnatural pressure was building behind his eyes. It felt like it wanted to break his skull. The violence continued as the pressure kept building. Around him, enemy and ally were moving slower and slower. One warrior stepped forward, chain blades sparking off the haft of Sevatar's own, but he fell with a single thrust to the chest. Sevatar turned and greeted the blow from the next angel. The more Sevatar killed, the more the pressure increased, as an edge of blackness began to surround his vision. It only took him a moment to realize it. It wasn't blood in his helmet, but a physical stain darkening his vision. Was he dying? Something burst in his skull, and his helmet was now definitely filled with blood. He couldn't hear his brothers shouting his name. They believed their first captain had been wounded, and he wasn't sure they were wrong. Tressa's warning rang through his skull, scalding it through his mind's eye, as if the words were written in fire upon his flesh. This will probably kill you, Jaego. You have the strength for this, but not the control. There's no going back from this. If you unlock the gift you fought so hard to forget, some doors cannot be closed. Sevatar staggered, down to one knee. He used the fall to cleave out the legs from the closest Dark Angel. The warrior cried out, dying a heartbeat later with Sevatar's glaive through his chestplate. I might be dying, he thought, and the laughter came unbidden. Sevatar turned his head to see Rushal standing above him, a sentinel in absolute black. The Raven swung his meteor hammer, the arc ending in a burst of lethal light as it cracked the helm of yet another Dark Angel. The warrior of the First Legion went down in silence, because everything was silent now. Rushal's meteor hammer no longer boomed with every impact. Sevatar's own erratic life signs no longer whined warnings at him. It was, somehow, serene. Sevatar vomited into his helm. He choked on his own bile, because he couldn't stop laughing. He was home. Nostromo. On the rooftop where he came to hide as a child. The sunless world hadn't burned yet in his Primarch's misguided and futile rage. Nothing had changed, as though the world was never annihilated by their own hands. He was standing, in the promise of rain before the true storm. The pressure in his head was just as it always had been when he was a child, threatening to bubble over into a fit that would have left him shaking. Ravens called out to him. They were hungry, and pecked at the rockcrete rooftop, fluttering their ragged wings. Diego reached for the handful of breadcrumbs in his pockets and offered them to the crows. It was enough food for tonight, but the crows wanted flesh, and Diego agreed. He came back with the body of another boy, and the crows feasted while Diego was catching his breath. He asked the crows to save him some, and they promised to leave him the eyes. Diego didn't like the eyes. He tried them once, and it made him see things. The crows croaked and laughed at this oldest of jokes. Diego sat in silence while they ate. He was bleeding from his nose and ears. He slept all night, twitching on the stone. The only sound was the flutter of dark wings and the brush of mangy feathers against his cheeks. No other sound ever soothed him. No other feeling ever took away the headaches long enough for him to sleep. Sevatar awoke. The battle was lost. He was stripped of his weapons and armor, and incarcerated with 9 of his brothers. A rather unwise choice. Sevatar leaned against the wall, listening to his brothers breathing easy. The invincible reason was in the warp. Where they were going, Sevatar could only guess. He knew Curze had brought almost 700 warriors from the Excoriator in his hasty and ill-advised assault. Perhaps his Quateria brothers were held in other cells. He toyed with the notion of believing it, but he wasn't a soul ever given to blind hope. The Primarch was not in bonds. That much he knew for certain. He heard his brothers rouse, and they began speaking of how the Dark Angels had overwhelmed them in a final assault, and Curze had fled. No doubt the Night Haunter was haunting the lower decks of his brother's flagship, as he once did the streets of Nostromo. Perhaps he would come and free his sons, but that was unrealistic. After all, had the Night Haunter ever come to break criminals out of their jails? Sevatar guessed they had lost half the fleet. The Excoriator was almost certainly destroyed, and perhaps the Nightfall too. The death of Trez was a shame, as Curze still needed him. But Sevatar's mind lingered most upon the mortal crew, the faces of those who had served him for years. Sevatar would never admit it to his brothers, or to the mortals in question, but now he mourned some of them. He suspected some of them to be related, the descendants of cousins he left behind in Nostromo, when he first became more than a man. The world had been an urban battlefield in the last century of its life, the scavenging population keeping no civility or morality, let alone historical records. Yet he couldn't shake the sense of connection with them, just as he couldn't shake how much they resembled the family he had once known. It was said that the Space Marines contained eidetic memories, yet Sevatar wasn't sure he remembered his mother's face. He pushed the melancholy aside, with no real difficulty. He wasn't a doleful soul, just as he wasn't an optimistic one. At least in captivity, Sevatar had time to plot, to muse, to process. The Thramas crusade was over. The Legion was scattered. While many would join the March on Terror, could one even still call the Night Lords a Legion, after all they had lost? The Night Lords made for poor prisoners. At any given opportunity, guards were slaughtered by makeshift shanks. Sevatar had even managed to break his cell, running rampant through the ship's holds until hunted down again. This time, the Primarch Lionel Johnson ordered more drastic measures. This new cell contained a force barrier. Sevatar was covered in darkness so deep that not even his Nostraman eyes could adjust and see anything. They kept him in this lightless cage, deactivating the barriers and awakening the illumination globes. For 15 minutes each day cycled to eat. They brought him nutrient-rich gruel that tasted of bland chemicals and stuck to his tongue like wet sawdust. He grinned at his captors every time. "This is the finest thing I've ever eaten. Even better than the last," he said. This disorientation was absolute. And even if he broke out, the prospect of fighting dozens of armed legionaries with nothing seemed like a swift suicide. He was alone. He wasn't sure how many weeks or months had passed. Perhaps the war was over, the Emperor or Horus dead. There was some measure of peace in the darkness, as nothing else existed beyond it. A voice came to him, prodding ever while. A woman's voice, asking him if he was still alive. The pain and pressure kept growing. The blood never stopped trickling from his nose. He found it was only her voice that relieved the pain. Sevatar dreamt, hearing the voices of dead Nostramo. For some time he had respite, but now they had returned. They bled into reality. Sometimes he even saw their eyes in the darkness of his cell, before slinking back into the shadows. It isn't real, he told himself. Sevatar awakens. He opens his eyes. In midnight clad stands a face he has not seen since the defeat at Thramas. Krukesh, one of his new Cryptera, was staring down at his first captain in chains. Is this another phantom? Perhaps his brother was now dead. Krukesh began to taunt him, telling him that this pathetic relic was unworthy to leave what remains of the Legion. It was only when a hand touched him did Sevatar's eyes open wide. He thrashed in his chains, screaming behind his gag. But just as suddenly, Krukesh was gone, enveloped in etheric backwash, leaving the first captain to wonder if his sanity had finally broken. In the long watches of the night, boredom is his only true companion. The dead lie in their graves, silent and rotting, righteously punished. When he hears them in his restless sleep, it is nothing but the misfiring throb of his own imprisoned dreams. That is what he tells himself. Jaeger, are you still alive? But not her. Her voice is the only one that sticks around, stronger than in any echo he had experienced before. Sevatar had not spoken to a ghost in a very long time, but he wondered if the girl had ever shared his cell. If that was the case, what had made her so special, that she deserved a cell fit for the Prince of Crows? Perhaps she simply died aboard this vessel. Like a lost child, she clung to Sevatar, observing him with strange curiosity. He doubts she even realizes she is dead. "Diego?" she asks. "I am here," he says to the cold air. There is blood running from his nose, hot and thick and slow. He wipes it away with the back of his hand. "I am here, Altani." "Is it the pain again?" she asks. Trez was right. Perhaps he should have accepted his help. It took great effort to speak past the grinding pressure that built in his brain. "It has been worse." "It feels like you are dying," Altani said. Sevatar chuckled at that, but didn't deny it. Death was not a laughing matter, except if it was his own. "I am still here for now. What do you want?" "Just to talk. I'm lonely," she said. "I am sorry to hear that, little one." Sevatar hesitated, already uncomfortable, yet wishing to keep her near for a while longer. Is this the 4th time she has come to him? The 5th? The pressure in his head defies his attempts to focus on even mundane tasks like tracking the passage of time. "Yours is the only voice I welcome. Did you know that?" "I don't understand. You hear other voices? Even when you are awake? I thought they came only in your dreams," Altani said. "Yes and no." Sevatar shrugged in the darkness. A futile gesture, if ever there was one. In truth, he had always heard them, even as a boy running through the streets of his backwater home. He had heard the people of Nostromo. They desired much and were very, very angry. He was deeply familiar with the endless murmuring of emotions people had behind their eyes, even the choked songs of the city's crows as they fought over food, but none of it compared to the whispering of the dead. He saw the flashes of their memories when he glanced into the eyes of a body in a gutter, and their pleas were endless, especially the victims of the Night Haunter's public hangings. Many begged him to avenge them. Sometimes they would speak with him, in that nameless place between slumber and consciousness. Telepathy, necromancy, but the words themselves didn't matter. All of the music of sentient thought had been his to hear, until the Legion sealed it away, leaving him in blessed silence. No longer did he overhear other thoughts. No more did he hear the beckoning offers of the slain, until now. "Diego, do you hear the other voices when you are awake?" Altani asked. "I have a gift. One I do not want. Once I tried very hard to lose, long ago." "That isn't what I asked, Diego. I know you have the talent. How else do you think we are speaking like this?" Sevatar's skin crawled at her knowing tone. "What child has the right to sound so knowledgeable about such things?" he said. "I watch," she replied, as calmly and peacefully as ever. "I listen. No wonder you're in so much pain. Did you truly seek to banish your talent?" "I tried, and for a time I succeeded," murmured Sevatar. In his century of life, he could never have imagined a young girl schooling him on the mind and soul. She warned him of the damage that banishing his gift had caused. To Sevatar it was a worthy price to pay, for a time at least. The Night Lords were not a legion that respected psychers. They were not allowed to lead. But since unlocking his gift, he knew the truth. It was slowly killing him. But Sevatar knew there were far worse deaths than this. He had even enacted some himself. Altani should know, he thought. He knew from experience the dead do not like being reminded they are, in fact, dead. Altani's voice at least soothed his pain. But she had a question. She wanted to know who the Prince of Crows was. Sevatar took a breath and explained that he was the Prince of Crows, a title given to him by his brothers. "What is a crow?" she asked. "You ask the strangest things," he said. He closed his eyes. "A crow is... On what world were you born?" he asked. "Terra. But I was taken by the First Legion when I was very young." "Ah, one of the Earthborn. I am honored. If you are from Terra, I assume you know what a bird is." "Yes, I've seen them in books." "Is a crow a type of bird?" she asked. "Black of feather and dark of eyes. It feeds on the bodies of the dead and sings in a raw, croaking call." "Why are you the Prince of Birds?" she asked. Another chuckle leaved his parched throat. His mind drifted to the crows he fed upon Nostromo. He leant his head back against the force field, feeling its angry hum vibrating through the back of his skull. "It is a title. A joke between my brothers and me. Crows feed on corpses, and I make a lot of corpses." The dead girl was silent for a time. You can feel her in the back of his mind sometimes, even when she says nothing. Her presence is like the sweep of invisible searchlights. "Are you lying to me, Jaeger?" "No, little one. It is true, but it is not the whole truth." Sevatar licked his cracked lips, tasting the blood upon them. "It is, however, enough truth for now." "Where is your homeworld?" Altani asked innocently. The breath he draws into his lungs is spiced by the scent of his own sour sweat. What he wouldn't give to be able to bathe. Gone. Dead. Destroyed years ago. "What was it called?" Altani asked. "Nostromo. A lawless and sunless place. It burned not because it was guilty, but because we failed to keep it innocent. Our laws failed the moment we sailed away to the stars. And in desperate embarrassment, our father incinerated the evidence of his failure." Sevatar asked her if she had ever seen a world die. She had not. He felt her presence, as in vision they glimpsed the place of his birth, through his own eyes. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Then from the stars the world was broken apart. Truly, honestly beautiful. I've never seen anything that stirred me the same way as the night I watched my homeworld burn. It's decreation incarnate. You unmake the very threads of the universe, pulling apart a body of rock and fire, and life that the galaxy itself conspired to create. You see the world's burning blood through the cracks in its breaking tectonic plates. Silence answered this heresy. Sevatar knew he was a traitor amongst traitors. His confession given at last. Finally, the dead girl speaks. "Jaeger, I don't understand you. That is because I am the only simple man in a complicated galaxy. Now the Imperium burns and trillions die in the trenches of Horus's ambition, and in the fires of the Emperor's hypocrisy. To the abyss with them. I spit on them both. The Lord of Night they call us. The nobility in the darkness. That is what we were born to be. I am not a soldier beholden to a master. I am justice. I am judgment. I am punishment. Or at least, what I should have been." Altani saw through to the truth, that Sevatar wanted to be punished for his crimes. Who was Sevatar judging? Who was he punishing? And most importantly, whose side was he on? After all, Sevatar had stopped escaping. He wanted to meet his justice. Sevatar lay on the floor, blood pooling around his head. The lumen globes flashed back into life, and Altani disappeared. Sevatar lifted his head and greeted his captors with a smile as unloving as a rusted blade. He acted eager for his food, and was grateful for their wondrous hospitality. Sevatar's captors stopped taking the bait long ago. They refused to engage or bite, and only stood in silence. Sevatar knew there were 3 of them. 2 kept their bolters on him, and a 3rd gave him the slop bucket. "Please convey my compliments to the chef," he says to them. "The last bucket was the finest yet." He hears the twin crunches of bolters braced against shoulder guards, and can't resist a smile even as his blood runs cold. "Well, this is new. Is there a reason you're taking aim at me?" "We heard you speaking before we entered. Has madness come so swiftly to the great torturer, now that he languishes in captivity?" said the angel. "So it would seem," Sevatar replies. "Who are you speaking to, Sevatar?" "The ghosts that share my cell. When you're left alone for such a long time, you tend to conjure your own company." "Are you aware that you are bleeding again?" "Am I? My thanks for your concern, cousin." "It wasn't a concern," the angel barked. "I know. I was imagining you were from a legion where your Primarch gifted you with manners. Can I have my nutrient slime now, noble knight? I'm ever so hungry." Sevatar managed to open his eyes, just enough to let in a sliver of vile light. 3 blurred figures stand before him, just as he expected. "I've not seen you before," he says to the first of the wardens. "I recognize the others, but not you. What brings you to my chambers, cousin?" "Do you find yourself amusing, traitor?" the angel replies. "You keep calling me that. Show some respect, angel. I outrank you, you know." The warrior gave a disgusted grunt. "We are watching you, Sevatar." "Seeing as I am caged like a prize pet, I can't imagine that makes for interesting viewing. Shouldn't you be out there, fighting your little war?" They don't rise to the bait, as he knew they wouldn't. Days pass. The Dark Angels leave his container of protein paste on the floor, before retreating back to the door. Sevatar waits for the charged hum of the power field to crackle back into life. Only then does he move, eating as a beast would eat, feeding from the gruel in his cupped palm. For a time, he is alone once more. There is nothing to relish in its cold, chemical untaste. "Diego?" Her voice comes again. The relief of her gentle tones is immediate and absolute. Ice water poured onto a burning wound. "Dinner is served," he tells her. "Are you hungry, little one?" He holds out his dripping hand, offering the protein slime to the darkness. "If you wish, you can share this glorious repast." "No, Diego, please listen to me," Altani whispers. "The Knights of the First aren't blind. They fear something is wrong with your mind. I am told there are many things wrong with my mind." He bares his gruel-wet teeth in a vile grin. "I'm afraid you'll have to be specific." "Because of the blood and the pain. They suspect your secret. One of them has the talent. He knows you're hiding something." Calm and sudden cold, Sevatar licked the bland, grey taste of the protein paste from his lips. "One of them was a psyker. How could you know that?" he asked. "I could feel him in here, with us. He reached out to you with his mind, just as I am. So, the First Legion were using their librarians to watch over him. An unforeseen threat he would have to deal with. But it wasn't the Dark Angels that left his blood running cold. Altani, he says cautiously. As close as he'd come to fear since he was taken and reshaped by the 8th Legion. Tell me something, little ghost. How did you die? What? Shock colors her tone. I'm not dead, Diego. Sevatar's blood is cold, like the frost that scales over powerless shipwrecks, drifting deep in the void, far from the light of any sun. He breathes through clenched teeth. His hands begin to tremble. Weaponless unease. She is in his head. This girl, this creature, has forced herself into his mind. Who are you? He says, his voice dangerous. Altani Shedu, second voice of the choir, she responds. The choir. The realization grips Sevatar in talons of black ice. She isn't some wraith lingering on the wrong side of the grave. She isn't the spirit of a girl who died aboard the Dark Angel's ship. She is an astropath. You are an astropath, he growls. I thought you knew, she whispers. How else would I reach you, if I didn't possess the talent? Sevatar finds himself laughing for the first time in all this torturous ordeal. Laughing through the diminished pain that the game's fate seems to play. You thought I was dead? She asks. She is faceless in his imagination, but he can almost picture her innocent, open-mouthed surprise. One of the dead voices that you dream? It doesn't matter, Altani. None of it matters. Will you not be punished for this contact? He asks. Yes, if they discover it. But I am the second voice, and the strongest of the choir. I would be first voice were I older. For a child to be raised to the rank of second voice, her psychic strength must be beyond measure, and that makes her precious to her masters, without a doubt. But Sevatar wondered just how safe she really was, speaking so intimately with the imprisoned enemy. Why, girl? Do you risk your life speaking with me? I saw your dreams, she responded. All of us have felt them intruding into our work. Your dreams are destroying the rhythm of our choir's ashapathic song. The others turned away, guarding against the pain of your mind. I alone did not. Why? He asks. Because I saw the redness of your nightmares. I knew I could ease your pain. I cannot teach you to master the talent, but I can keep it from killing you. His reply is a blade cast out into the dark, made vicious by his anger. Is this a game you play with First Legion prisoners? He feels the words flash from his tongue like throwing knives, hurting her, wherever she is. But anger steals what little guilt he is capable of feeling. Is this some pathetic attempt to breed gratitude towards an ally of my captors? Some scheme to break me with kindness rather than privation? No, not that. Not for any of those reasons, she says. Then why? Why did you do this? Why did you do this? She doesn't break in the face of his fury. Listen to yourself, Diego. Unable to feel gratitude without suspicion. Unable to even understand why someone would help another soul in pain. Your homeworld has poisoned you. That is no answer at all. Not to you, no. You are a broken soul, Diego. Always thinking of yourself. Always judging yourself. You've lost the right to judge anyone else. Her words hit him with the force of a blow to the head. He stares blindly into the darkness, as if he might see her there, but she recedes from his mind. This time, for the first time, he chases her, reaching out with an untrained, instinctive sense he swore he would never use. But she is gone. His visible grip does nothing but dredge the empty silence. "Thank you," Sevatar says. It is the first time he has said those words and meant them in many years. "I wasn't sure you would return. He caught me. Diego." Sevatar hears it then. Some new tension in her voice that was never present before. Some new discomfort. It focuses him, drawing his wandering thoughts together in a blade of concentration. Despite the queasiness, he sits up in a slow, smooth motion. "Who caught you?" he asks. "My overseer, the master of the choir and the first voice. He sensed our contact. I thought I was careful enough." "Hush now," he says softly. The sluggishness leaves his words. His tone grows as cold as his concentration. "They punished you, didn't they?" he asks. "Yes, and not for the first time. But it's over now." Sevatar did not care. He needed to know what happened. He felt a violent urge and stood up, missing his spear. But he knew he did not need it. He had killed plenty of men and women with his bare hands. He demanded Altani tell him what happened. And when she refused, he simply reached into her mind and ripped the information from her. He feels her flesh elsewhere, a husk of battered meat and broken bone. He knows what they did to her. He feels her utterly human panic of being beaten while helpless and blind, unable to raise a hand against the incoming blows. He feels the lashes of whips cracking, with electrical discharge across his unarmored body. He feels something give in his spine, a crunchy snap of dislocation, and the numbness that follows. He knows everything. They scoured her for 7 days and 7 nights. She could no longer walk, but even paralyzed, she is still of use. An Astropath needs no legs to sing her war-born song. Sevatar feels his lips peel back. It is an ugly sentence fit for the madmen of the Martian Mechanicum, who are known to do such things to their disobedient thralls. He releases her mind and faces the door. He hears them now. Their boots echo on the iron deck, sending minute shivers through the floor. "Let them come," he whispers. "You can't fight them all." "I have no intention of fighting them. You said it yourself, girl. I earned this punishment." There is no self-pity in his words, no melancholy, no torment, only vindication. Sevatar wants justice. The light in his cell flicker back on, and as always, Sevatar is forced to close his eyes or be blinded. The power field expires with a crack, and a moment later, the bulkhead opened on its grinding tracks once more. He keeps his eyes closed as bootsteps enter his cell. The guards were patient enough to let Sevatar adjust his eyesight to the light, preferring that he walk on its own instead of being dragged. "Diego," says the Dark Angel closest to him. All 12 warriors stop in the same moment, standing motionless in the red-lit reaches of the tributary corridor. He stops in their midst, looking at each of them in turn. "You'll die if they take you onto the prison ship," says one of the other legionaries. "I can help you, but I cannot hold this for long," says yet another.
How are you doing this?
Sevatar murmurs in astonishment.
How strong are you, child?
"One of them is a librarian. Fights me at every moment. His strength is immense." says the librarian. Sevatar looks to the head of the column. Beneath warrior's black armor plating is etched with elegant Carbonite rune script. He stands unhelmed, his features shadowed beneath a hood of ivory cloth. As the Night Lord's captain draws near, he sees the warrior's face drawn in a rictus of effort. Narrowed eyes quiver with the strain of fighting an unseen battle, and sweat forms diamonds on the Dark Angel's brow.
Hello, cousin.
Sevatar breathes softly.
Don't struggle. This will only take a moment.
The librarian's eyes roll with an exquisite, trembling slowness to gaze upon the other warrior.
No, you are.
Sevatar snatches the pistol holder at the Dark Angel's hip and puts a bolt between his eyes. The headless corpse remains standing, but he feels Altani's sigh of relief in his mind as he throws the pistol to the deck.
You didn't have to kill him, Diego.
One of the other Dark Angels says.
No, but it suited me to do so.
Yet another warrior turns to him.
You're almost at the ancillary hangar deck. I can help you steal away onto a cargo hauler, or a tug moving between the vessels that anchor over Macragge. You can hide on board one of the warships, making ready to...
Little one, enough. There is only one thing I need to know.
Even as he speaks, he's reaching for the chainsword sheathed at the closest Dark Angel's back.
What is it?
The warrior asks, turning to face him. Sevatar's fingers tighten around the handle of the legionary's war-scarred blade. He knows that a long, confined journey through the ship's maintenance ducts lies in the immediate future, and she will have to help him, as best as she can, but it will be worth it. Justice, judgment, punishment rings in his mind.
Just tell me where you are, Altani. I want to hear your choir sing.
The chainsword bites into the choir's primary gnosis pod. It vents oxygen and pressurized gas, and coolant a spillage of clear, fizzling liquid. The occupant, a wizened and grey-haired reverend of a man by the name of Memnoch, is 30 Terran Standard years old. He looks 50, and has the health of a man of 70. Astro-telepathy is an unkind vocation. The brighter a mind burns, the more Veraclius it eats through the body's resources. This ruined man screams in blind panic as he's pulled from his cushioned cradle. Far greater than the shock of being unhooked from the muscle needles and biofeeds is the devastating shriek as he falls out of the choir's harmonic song. Fire rakes across the surface of his mind, moving into the veins of his brain like a flood of burning oil. But even weakened by disorientation and stunned by pain, instinct does not desert him entirely. As he is hauled into the air by impossibly strong hands, he reaches for the lash at his hip, only to find that it isn't there. Unlike most astropaths, the Overseer's eye sockets aren't empty. Crude bionics whir and click as they seek to refocus, offering him the distorted image of a towering man he doesn't know, staring into his face with black eyes he doesn't recognize, whispering in a voice he's never heard before.
I have come for you.
Overseer Memnoch's first words after awakening is a single syllable. He asks what many men in his position might well ask. Why? The first word is also his last. Sevatar collars him with his own lash, garroting the helpless man with the same weapon Memnoch used to beat the youngest member of his choir until her spine gave out. Diego Sevatarian is an experienced murderer, well familiar with the force required to kill a man in any way the mortal mind can imagine. He strangles the master of the astropaths slowly, lovingly, his gene-enhanced muscles barely straining. Just enough strength to drag out the execution without breaking the psyker's neck. The Overseer's psychic sense is a maddened, feral thing, pathetically flapping against the Night Lord's mind as uselessly as his fingers claw at Sevatar's unyielding flesh. His eyes bulge. The flesh of his face darkens from red to purple, and finally to blue. His struggles weaken, become twitches, and finally cease. Sevatar doesn't let go. Not yet. For all his flaws, he's a thorough soul when it comes to duty. Huge ornate doors, sealed against intrusion, finally open amidst a phalanx of knights in black armor. The Dark Angels surround him, ordering him to the deck, raising their bolters to take aim.
I am justice,
Sevatar calls out to them. With a last wrenching twist, he breaks the corpse's neck and casts it onto the deck by his bare feet.
I am judgment. I am punishment. And I surrender.
He sits alone in the blackened stillness, listening to the slow rhythm of his breathing. A sense of serenity cloaks him now, and a feeling of cold focus that has eluded him for decades. When he dreams now, it is not of the dead, but of the endless night between worlds, the deepest void, where 1,000 threats drift away from the light of loyal suns. The domains of aliens and monsters forced into exile by the Great Crusade, still crying out to be extinguished once and for all. The true threats to mankind. Jaeger. The girl's voice comes to him again at last. Are you still alive? And in the darkness of his cell, Sevatar smiles.